She called him boy, not to his face. Under her breath, just loud enough for the two sales associates standing behind her to hear. Just loud enough to make sure everyone understood the hierarchy she had decided on before he even opened his mouth. He was standing in the lobby of Ashford and Payne Fine Jewelers, holding a paper coffee cup from the gas station across the street, wearing a gray Henley that had seen better days and construction boots that were still dusty at the toe. He had come in through the main entrance, same as anyone. He'd held the door open for an older woman on his way in. He smiled at the receptionist. None of that mattered to Rochelle Dunbar. Rochelle Dunbar, 52 white, the store director of the flagship Ashford and Payne location in downtown Nashville, Tennessee. 23 years with the company. Silver hair she kept pinned back so tight it looked painful. Reading glasses on a pearl chain around her neck. She walked the floor of that store like a general inspecting troops. Slow, deliberate, shoulders back, chin lifted just high enough to look down at nearly everyone. The man in the Henley had no idea what was about to happen. His name was Darius Elwood. 29 years old, black, 6'1", with the kind of still, unhurried energy that made you think he'd never once in his life been in a rush. His hands were large, calloused. His boots were scuffed at the toe from actual work, not decoration. He had a small scar above his left eyebrow from a fall at 12 years old that he'd never bothered to explain to anyone who asked. He wasn't browsing. He had come in with a purpose. Let me back up. Because to understand what happened next, you need to understand exactly who Darius Elwood was, and what he was carrying in the inside pocket of that worn Henley. Now let me tell you what Rochelle Dunbar did before he got 3 steps past the entrance. She materialized beside him the way people do when they think their presence alone is a message. Not to help, not to greet. She planted herself at an angle that blocked the center display. The one with the anniversary rings and the engagement sets under warm spotlights, and she tilted her head the way you tilt it at a stray dog that's wandered into your yard. "Can I help you find something?" she said. She did not say it kindly. Darius looked at her, took a moment. "Yes, ma'am, I'm looking for something in the diamond range." "Engagement?" Rochelle's eyes moved over him once, head to toe, the way you'd scan a receipt for errors. "Our diamond collection starts at 8,000, she said. "Just so you know." Darius nodded. "Okay, the items in that case." She gestured past him toward the wall display. The one with the silver pendants and gold chains, the more accessible section, far from the engagement floor. Those tend to be more popular for walk-in customers. Darius didn't look where she pointed. He kept his eyes on her. Calm. Even. "I'm not interested in the wall cases," he said. "I'd like to see the solitaires, 2 carats and up." Something shifted in Rochelle's expression. Not embarrassment, not reconsideration, something colder. A decision being made. "We do have an appointment-based process for our high-value inventory," she said. "I'd be happy to have someone call you to schedule a proper consultation." "I don't have an appointment," Darius said. "I'd like to look today." "I understand that." She smiled, and the smile didn't reach anything above her cheekbones. "But our associates are occupied with scheduled clients, and without an appointment, we can't provide the appropriate level of service for inventory at that price point." There was a young woman standing 3 feet away at the edge of the main floor. Her name was Bria Hollis, 24, one of the sales associates. 2 months into the job, she was black. She had heard every word. She stood holding a velvet tray and said nothing, because the first week she started, Rochelle had told her, not cruelly, just plainly, as if it were a policy, that she should let her handle certain walk-in situations. Bria stared at the tray in her hands. Darius looked at Bria. Bria looked at the floor. He turned back to Rochelle. "There's no appointment requirement on your website," he said. "It's a soft policy," Rochelle said. "For high-ticket items, I'd like to speak with a manager. I am the manager." He looked at her for a moment. Quiet, no anger, no raised voice. Just a man doing the math on a situation and deciding what to do next. "All right," he said. He reached into the inside pocket of his Henley and pulled out a folded slip of paper. He placed it on the glass counter between them without ceremony. That's a bank confirmation. Pre-cleared funds. $50,000. Available same-day transfer, issued to Ashford and Payne this morning. He slid it another inch toward her. I'd still like to see the solitaires. Rochelle looked down at the paper. Her expression did not change immediately. It took 3 full seconds. Then she picked it up. Then she put it back down. Anyone can print something like this, she said. Her voice had lost some of its certainty. Not all of it. Not yet. I'm sure you understand we'd need to verify. Verify it, Darius said. I'll wait. She turned to the associate at the register. Call corporate authorization. She said it with her back half turned to Darius, like he was already background noise. What Rochelle Dunbar did not know, what no one in that store knew except the paper sitting on that glass counter, was exactly who Darius Elwood was and what he'd spent the last 4 years building. Here's the part she missed. Darius had grown up in North Nashville, in a neighborhood where the roads were always the last to get repaved and the schools were always the first to lose funding. His mother, Vivian, had cleaned offices downtown for 30 years. His father had left when Darius was 7 and hadn't left a forwarding address. Darius had worked since he was 14, lawns, groceries, construction cleanup. He didn't complain about any of it. He said once that hard work was the only thing no one could take from you. At 23, he'd taken the $15,000 he'd saved over a decade of odd jobs and invested it in a small logistics startup that 3 of his college friends were launching out of a shared apartment in East Nashville. Everyone in his family told him he was making a mistake. His aunt had pulled him aside at a cookout and whispered, "Baby, don't throw your money away on some pipe dream." He thanked her and signed the paperwork the following Monday. The company's name was ClearPath Distribution. 4 years later, it had contracts with 4 national retail chains, a warehouse facility in Memphis, and a second one under construction outside Atlanta. Darius didn't talk about it much. He drove the same truck he'd had since he was 22. He ate lunch from the same taco cart near his office on Wednesdays. He coached youth basketball on Saturday mornings. The reason he was at Ashford and Payne that Tuesday morning was his girlfriend, Tamara, who had dropped a picture of a specific ring into his text thread 6 weeks ago with no caption, just the photo and a single heart emoji. He'd screenshot it. He'd found it. He'd saved for the specific one. He had not worn a suit. He had come from a job site meeting in Clarksville and driven straight to the store. He didn't think he needed to dress differently to buy a ring. He was right. Back in the store, the authorization call took 8 minutes. Bria watched from her position near the display wall. She saw the associate on the phone. She saw Rochelle standing with her arms crossed at a careful distance from Darius, not looking at him, performing busyness with a clipboard. She saw Darius standing at the counter with his coffee cup and his patience, unbothered in a way that made Bria's chest ache. She had been in that position, not in this store, in a department store in Atlanta when she was 19, trying to return a blouse with a receipt, and the manager had treated her the same way, with that particular brand of polite refusal that wasn't about policy at all. The associate put down the phone. He walked to Rochelle and spoke in a low voice. Rochelle's jaw shifted. She picked up the paper again, looked at the number, put it down. "The funds are confirmed," the associate said, louder than he probably intended. Rochelle turned back toward Darius. Her posture was the same. Her voice was the same. The only thing that had changed was that the certainty behind her eyes had developed a crack. "Mr. She started. "Elwood," Darius said. "Mr. Elwood." She gestured toward the engagement floor. "Let me show you our solitaire collection." She didn't apologize. She didn't acknowledge anything that had just happened. She simply pivoted and began walking, expecting him to follow, as if the previous 12 minutes had been routine procedure and everyone should move along now. Darius looked at Bria. She was looking at him. He gave her the faintest nod, not triumphant, not pitying. The kind of nod that said, "I see you, and I'm going to remember you were here." He followed Rochelle to the engagement floor. He spent 40 minutes looking at solitaires. He asked precise questions about cut grade, table percentage, fluorescence. He knew what he was talking about. Rochelle had to answer twice when she gave him incomplete information the first time. By the end, her clipboard was gone and she was fetching trays herself. He chose a 2.3-carat round brilliant in a platinum setting. Exactly the ring from Tamara's text. He paid. He thanked the sales associate at the register, not Rochelle, and walked out into the Nashville afternoon with a small velvet box in his jacket pocket. He did not feel like he had won something. He felt tired in a way he couldn't quite name. That evening, he called his friend and business partner, Marcus Webb, and told him what had happened. Marcus was furious in the immediate, vocal way that Darius never was. "Sue them," Marcus said. "That's discrimination. That's a paper trail." "I know," Darius said. "So, what are you going to do?" Darius was quiet for a moment. "Something better than a lawsuit," he said. He didn't explain. He didn't need to. Marcus had known him for 12 years, and he understood that when Darius said he was going to do something, it was already decided, and it was already in motion. Here is what Rochelle Dunbar did not know. 3 weeks before Darius walked into that store, Ashford and Payne's parent company, a luxury retail group called Meridian Holdings, had entered into acquisition discussions with an investment consortium. The consortium's lead partner was ClearPath Distribution, which had recently expanded its investment arm into retail logistics and infrastructure. Darius was the lead partner. He had known for 2 weeks that Meridian Holdings was on his list. He had not yet done the due diligence visit. He had meant to send someone from his team. But that morning, coming back from Clarksville, he'd driven past the store and thought, "I'll go myself." The way he always did with new acquisitions. Unannounced, no entourage, just him. The day after the ring purchase, he called his attorney, Courtney Fielding, and told her to fast-track the Meridian Holdings file. He asked her to pull everything: store performance metrics, employee turnover by location, HR complaint history, customer escalation logs across all 12 Ashford and Payne locations. He also asked her to request the security footage from the flagship Nashville location for the previous 30 days. Courtney had worked with Darius for 4 years. She didn't ask why. She just started typing. The footage arrived in 48 hours. Darius watched it on a laptop at his kitchen table, a plate of reheated pasta going cold beside him. He watched himself walk in. He watched Rochelle move to intercept him before he reached the first display case. He watched the 12 minutes that followed with the sound on, catching every word. Then he watched the rest. He watched a black couple turned away from the engagement floor 2 weeks prior. Rochelle had told them the collection was being updated. The display was fully stocked. He watched a Latino man in work clothes ask to see a watch and get redirected to a wall display of fashion watches that started at $200. The man had been looking for a Patek Philippe. The footage showed the Patek display, fully accessible, 30 feet away. He watched Bria Hollis be sent to the stockroom during a visit from 2 white walk-in customers, even though she was the only associate free. He finished the pasta cold. He closed the laptop. The next morning, he sent 3 emails. The first was to the CEO of Meridian Holdings, a man named Gerard Bassett, requesting a formal meeting and noting that his consortium was prepared to move forward, pending the completion of a culture and compliance review of the Nashville flagship location. The second was to an employment law firm that specialized in workplace discrimination, attaching the footage and a summary of documented incidents. The third was to Bria Hollis, whose contact information he'd gotten from the store's public HR inquiry line, asking if she'd be willing to speak with his team. She replied in under an hour. Yes. Gerard Bassett replied the same day. He called, actually, didn't email back. He called Darius's direct line and said, in a voice that tried to project calm and mostly just projected panic, "I've just been made aware of some concerns at our Nashville location. I want to assure you we take this seriously." Darius said, "I know. That's why I sent the email." He was not rude. He was not heated. He simply let the weight of what he knew sit in the silence between sentences until Gerard Bassett felt it. "We'll be conducting an immediate review," Gerard said. "I know," Darius said again. I'll be doing the same. The review at the Nashville flagship began that Friday. A three-person team from Meridian Holdings' corporate HR division arrived at 9 in the morning. They were joined by an independent investigator from the employment law firm, a tall woman named Philippa Osai, who wore a charcoal blazer and carried a recorder and asked questions with the patience of someone who already knew most of the answers. Rochelle Dunbar arrived at the store that morning in her usual outfit, pressed blazer, pearl chain glasses, pin-straight posture. She was met at the door not by her assistant manager, but by Philippa Osei and the HR team. They walked her to the conference room in the back, the same one she'd used for 12 performance reviews and 2 termination meetings over the years. We'd like to go over some footage with you, Philippa said. And then we'd like to hear your account of a customer interaction from this past Tuesday. The footage played on a laptop screen. Rochelle watched herself walk across the floor toward Darius. She watched herself deliver the appointment line. She watched her face while he placed the bank confirmation on the counter. She watched the 12 minutes she had spent believing she was protecting her store from something. When it ended, she said, I was following standard protocol for unscheduled high-value clients. Philippa set a printed document on the table. Ashford and Payne's Customer Service Guidelines. Would you point me to the section that outlines this protocol? Silence. 2 days later, Philippa's team had interviewed 9 current employees. 4 of them described a pattern, not one incident, a pattern. The way certain customers were redirected before they could reach the engagement floor. The way Bria had been consistently assigned to stock duties during peak hours when walk-in traffic was predominantly white. The way Rochelle had once said, in the break room, within earshot of 2 employees, that the store had a certain clientele to protect. On Monday morning, Gerard Bassett called Rochelle directly. It was a short call. She was terminated effective immediately for violating the company's non-discrimination policy, creating a hostile work environment, and conduct unbecoming of a director. She was also informed that a civil complaint had been filed with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, naming her personally, along with the company. She had been the store director for 11 years. She cleaned out her office in 40 minutes, under the watch of an HR representative who stood in the doorway and didn't make eye contact. She carried a single box of personal items through the showroom she had run for more than a decade, past the display cases she had arranged herself, past the employees who looked away. She pushed through the glass doors. They closed behind her, and the lock clicked, and the store kept going without her before she reached the parking lot. Bria Hollis was called into the conference room the following morning. She sat down expecting a warning, maybe a "we're restructuring the team" conversation, maybe a box of her own. Instead, the regional HR director, a woman named Tricia Montague, stood up when Bria came in. She said, I want to start by apologizing. What happened here was not acceptable, and you should not have had to endure it. Bria looked at her for a long moment. Then she talked. She talked for an hour and 16 minutes. She talked about the walk-in customers she was systematically removed from before they reached the floor. She talked about being sent to the stock room during 3 consecutive Saturday mornings when the traffic was highest. She talked about the comment Rochelle had made about certain clientele. She talked about the Tuesday morning when she stood holding a velvet tray and watched a man in a Henley get told he wasn't the right kind of customer. And she'd been too afraid to say a word, and she'd thought about that moment every single night since. When she finished, her eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. Tricia offered her a promotion. Assistant store director, effective the following Monday. A raise. A seat at the table for the upcoming policy overhaul across all 12 locations. Bria said she needed to think about it overnight. The next morning, she said yes. The acquisition moved forward. Darius Elwood's consortium completed the purchase of Meridian Holdings, and with it, all 12 Ashford and Payne locations 6 weeks after the incident. The deal had already been in motion. What changed was the speed and the conditions. As part of the acquisition terms, Darius required a full third-party audit of hiring and promotion practices across all locations, a mandatory training program for every floor-level employee, and the appointment of an independent diversity compliance officer with direct reporting access to the board. He did not call a press conference. He did not post on social media. He did not give interviews. His attorney released a single statement confirming the acquisition and noting that the new ownership group was committed to ensuring every customer who walks through an Ashford and Payne door is treated with the same dignity and care, regardless of what they're wearing when they walk in. That was all. The story broke anyway. Someone in the store, nobody ever confirmed who, had mentioned the incident to a friend who mentioned it to a journalist at the Nashville Banner. The journalist filed a public records request for the EEOC complaint. The complaint was a matter of public record. It referenced the footage. Footage was described in enough detail that the story wrote itself. The headline read, "Investment CEO refused service at Nashville jewelry store. Turns out he was there to buy the building." It ran on a Tuesday. By Thursday, it had been picked up nationally. By Friday, Rochelle Dunbar's name was attached to it because the EEOC complaint was public and her name was in it, and the internet found it in under 2 hours. She gave no interviews. She did not respond to media requests. Her attorney released a 4-sentence statement saying she disagreed with the characterization of events. Nobody found the statement satisfying. Former employees began to come forward. A man who had worked in the stockroom 3 years prior described being told not to engage with customers on the floor. A woman who had worked in accounting described hearing Rochelle tell a male associate to redirect the wrong type of foot traffic. A sales associate who had left 6 months earlier described watching 2 teenagers, black, in school clothes, looking at promise rings, get stopped at the entrance and told the store was appointment only for browsing. There was no appointment policy for browsing. There had never been one. The EEOC opened a formal investigation. They subpoenaed HR records going back 5 years. The investigation expanded to 3 other Ashford and Payne locations after similar complaint patterns emerged in the data. The civil complaint against Rochelle Dunbar personally moved forward in parallel. Her attorney attempted to settle quietly. Darius's legal team declined the first 2 offers. The third offer, which included a substantial financial settlement and a court-supervised public statement, was accepted. The statement was read at a courthouse in Davidson County on a gray March morning. Rochelle stood at a podium in a blue blazer, a sheet of paper in both hands. She read slowly. She apologized to Darius Elwood by name. She apologized to Bria Hollis by name. She apologized to every customer who had been redirected, dismissed, or made to feel unwelcome during her tenure. Her voice broke once on Bria's name. She finished. She stepped away from the podium. She did not take questions. She walked to her car in the parking lot and sat there for a while before she drove away, and no one who watched her go said a word. The video of that statement was viewed 4 million times in the first 72 hours. So where are they now? Rochelle Dunbar is no longer in luxury retail. The industry is small, and her name had become the kind of name that ends conversations in hiring rooms. She took a position managing inventory for a mid-size home goods chain outside of Murfreesboro. No showroom, no clientele to protect. Just a warehouse and a spreadsheet and the slow understanding that the world she thought she'd built had been built on something she never should have stood on. Whether she understands what she really did, not just the professional mistake, but the human one, is something only she knows. Bria Hollis stayed. She rebuilt the Nashville flagship floor from the inside. She hired differently. She trained differently. She greeted every walk-in customer personally for the first 90 days she was in the director's chair, because she wanted the culture to start with her hands, not a memo. Within a year, the Nashville location had the highest new customer retention rate in the entire Ashford and Payne network and the lowest associate turnover. She keeps one thing on her desk: A small frame note she wrote to herself the night after she gave her statement to Philippa Osie's team. It says, "You stayed quiet once. You won't do it again. She means it." And Darius Elwood proposed to Tamara on a Saturday night in April at the restaurant where they'd had their first date, with the 2.3-carat round brilliant in the platinum setting, exactly as she'd sent him in a text with no caption and a single heart emoji. She said yes before he finished the sentence. He still drives the same truck. He still eats from the same taco cart on Wednesdays. He still coaches basketball on Saturday mornings. And when the kids on his team ask him what the most important thing about being a leader is, he always says the same thing. Not vision, not strategy, not money. He says, how you treat someone when you think they can't do anything for you. That's the whole test. Everything else is just details. Now I want to ask you something, because I've thought about this story for a long time, and the part that stays with me, the part I keep coming back to, isn't Rochelle. It's the other people in that store. The associate who watched and said nothing. The customer near the back who heard every word and turned back to the display case. The people who were there, who knew, and who found reasons not to speak. I've been in rooms like that. You probably have too. Maybe on one side, maybe on the other, maybe just standing at the edge, trying to figure out what your role is supposed to be. So here's what I want to know. What do you do when you see it happening in real time, not online, not in a story someone's telling you, but right in front of you? What does it cost to say something? What does it cost to stay quiet? Drop your answer in the comments. I read them. I want to know what you think. And if this story hit you somewhere real, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe, because the next one is already written, and I promise you it's going to make your jaw drop. Remember this, dignity doesn't come with a dress code. It doesn't care what you drove to get there or what you've got on your back. It belongs to everyone who walks through the door. The only question is whether the people behind the counter have figured that out yet.